The Incredible Stinking Stan by Omri Stephenson and Debra Leigh. Stan was what you might call a pampered pooch. Shampooed to perfection, towel dry, perfumed and even powdered. Mrs. Frank, their neighbour, used to say, "How do you keep him looking so neat and tidy? My dog Sid's always rolling in the grass, chasing squirrels and getting up to all sorts of mischief. He doesn't stay clean for more than 2 minutes." Just like his neat and tidy owners, Mr. and Mrs. Pernickety, Stan loved being super clean. At least he thought he did. In fact, he had to be the most spotless, sweetest smelling dog on the street. Stan was different to all the other dogs. He thought he smelled and behaved better than all of them. He never got up to any mischief like Scruffy Sid. Stan thought he smelled just like wet towels. Even Pongy Pickles across the road, who looked cute with his fluffy waggy tail, whiffed like fried chicken, and as far as Stan knew, never got washed at all. And he never drove everyone crazy like barking Matilda from 2 doors down, who Stan thought reeked of boiled cabbage. Poor Stan only ever saw or smelled them through the open window, or sometimes through the gates of his front garden, where he was allowed to do, well, you know what, before it was swiftly scooped up in a sweet-scented poo bag. Stan's days were always the same, staying home, where he wasn't just clean, he was kept comfortable, safe and warm. He was also rather bored. Most of the day, all he had for company was the family's parrot, Couscous, named after her favourite food, who spent most of the time out of her cage, whizzing round the living room, squawking, "Time for tea, time for tea," even if it wasn't. But one day, whilst Mr. and Mrs. Pernickety were busy making the tea, their twins Phoebe and Phoenix went out to play and were in such a rush that they left the front door open by mistake. Never one to miss an opportunity, Couscous swiftly flew outside, closely chased by Stan, as a gust of wind made the front door shut with a clonk. Away from the house, the noises and sights were amazing to Stan. Scary, startling, but exciting. Even the smell of car exhaust fumes, which got into his coat as well as up his nose, made Stan bark with curiosity. Stan chased Couscous, but was finding it hard to catch up with her. It was market day on the town's main street, but Stan was running too fast through the stands, and crunch! Down came trays of slimy wet fish and crushed ice. He yelped and jumped up high, but Couscous kept flapping her little blue wings, and he couldn't quite catch her. Couscous flew into Luigi's restaurant, followed closely by Stan, and into a kitchen smelling of delicious Italian soups, sauces, salads and seasoning. Couscous swooped down and Stan raced forward, determined to get her this time. But then, clang! The food waste bin went flying and landed all over him. The waiters and chefs shook their fists. Stan, covered in tomato and stringy spaghetti, made a dash for the exit. Outside, Couscous squawked from up above and darted off in a different direction. The direction of the town square, where the summer fair was in full swing. Stan jumped onto one of the rides and felt a bit dizzy until he was chased off. A little girl cried out as she dropped her candy floss onto Stan's fur. It smelled and tasted sweet and sticky. In a sugary haze, he rushed past her poor dad and plop! A big blob of chocolate chip and vanilla ice cream landed on Stan's nose. He thought that tasted good too. Then he remembered he was supposed to be chasing Couscous. But where was she? Just then, Stan spotted something bright blue and feathery heading straight for the town's children's farm. The animal scattered wildly as he dashed past a rabbit hutch, raced through cowpats, skidded on llama poo, tore through a chicken coop, darted through straw, and even managed to break a few duck eggs on the way. It all smelt like nothing he'd ever smelled before. Stan thought he smelled marvellous. But he hadn't noticed that Couscous was getting hungry and thwomp. She didn't see the kitchen farmhouse window and nearly knocked herself out before landing on the soft grass below. Stan quickly jumped up and pulled a shopping bag off the door handle, and Couscous, dazed and confused, just about managed to crawl into it. Feeling smelly but proud, Stan gently carried the bag in his jaws and headed home. Now Stan was feeling incredible, as well as smelling incredible. Stan looked quite a sight and smelled quite a smell when he reached his front door. Couscous had started to wake up. Her beak and head were feeling sore. "Time for tea," she muttered, and promptly went back to sleep. "You found her! Well done, Stan!" the Panickaties all cheered. "We thought we'd lost her and you forever." "But Stan, you don't half pong," said Mrs. Panickety, as she sniffed the air around him. "I can smell candy floss," shouted Phoebe. "She must have been to the fair," said Mrs. Panickety. "I think I can smell chickens," said Mr. Panickety. "And cowpat," said Phoenix. "That must be the petting farm." "Hey, I can smell some old fish on his fur," said Phoebe, "and pizza." "He must have been to the market too," said her mum. Why haven't we taken Stan to all these places before?" yelled the twins. "He might stink, but at least he's had fun." Mr. and Mrs. Panickety had to agree. So instead of his next trip to the grooming parlour, the family took him out. To the market, the children's farm, the fair, and later the restaurant. Well, not the restaurant, but he did dream about it. And he had the best time ever. And that summer, when they took him on their holiday, they left behind his bath perfume, powders and shampoos. And while he no longer stank, he wasn't too clean either. So now, when he goes on his daily walks in the park, he's never alone for long. He never gets bored and smells just as good as all the other dogs.